At this point, you're probably wondering how you get a program to do different things in different situations. So, for example, if you were asking a math question, what if you wanted to alert the user some kind of congratulations if they got it right? The way we do that is using something called selection, or more informally, it's called decision making. So let's take a look at just an example of how we could do that. So we're going to ask the user a simple math question. Now we want to tell them that they got the answer correct, if they did in fact get it right. We use the keyword if, followed by a pair of brackets, and inside the brackets we put a condition. Now what is a condition? A condition is a comparison that can be true or false. So we might say if the user guess is equal to 35, then we're going to let them know that they got the right answer. So to go over that again, we use the word if to make a decision. Based on the condition that we pass to the if, we can do something if it's true. So whatever the user enters in for user guess, we're going to compare that value to 35. And if it's the same, we're going to tell the user that they got the correct answer. Now you'll notice I'm using curly braces around this piece of code. This is so that we can have multiple lines of code in this block in case you do more than one thing if this condition is true. For example, imagine we had a variable called number of correct guesses. If they get the right answer, we might want to add 1 to the number of correct guesses. If I run this, you'll see it asks for the answer. I'm going to type in 35, and when I click OK, nothing happens. This is the kind of error you're going to see when you're programming, and you need to think very carefully about why this block of code didn't run. This block of code didn't run because this condition was considered to be false. So user guess was not equal to 35. If we think carefully, that's because the prompt returns us back text. So technically, user guess was this. And JavaScript is very careful to check whether two things are exactly the same when you use three equal signs. So the 35 is not the same as this 35 because this one's text. So to fix that, we want to make sure to convert this value that we get back to a number. Let's try that again. So now it says correct. And even though we don't know, because we couldn't tell from that code, number of correct guesses got increased by 1 because it was inside this block of code. So if the condition in here is true, it's going to run the block of code in here. What happens if you want to do something different if this is in fact false? So maybe we wanted to let the user know that they got it incorrect and what the right answer was. You simply add to the end of the block the word else. So this is what to do if this is false. So if it's true, we're going to do this, else we're going to do something else. So now if I type in the wrong answer, I get a message that tells me that that answer was in fact wrong. Now you don't have to use the equals to test two things. This will be true if user guess is exactly 35. You could imagine a situation where you're looking for values in a range, like a value between 10 and 20, or a value over or under a certain value. For example, I might ask the user, what is your age? And if they are greater than or equal to 16 years old, I might let them know that you are old enough to drive. Otherwise, I could say you are not old enough to drive. Now, obviously, these variable names don't make as much sense anymore, but just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to run this. And for my age, I'll just put in a value that's greater than 16 and test it. And it says you're old enough to drive. I'm going to try it again with a value that's less than 16. And it says you are not old enough to drive. And a good idea is to test the numbers really close to the value you're actually testing. So we'd call that an edge case. So what happens when I actually type in 16? Well, when I type in 16, it says you are old enough to drive, because 16 for user guess is equal to 16, and this operator is greater than or equal to. So some other operators you can use, in addition to greater than or equal to, you can test to see if the value on the left is less than or equal to. You can test to see if it's just plain old less than or just plain old greater than. You can also test text, so you can see if a string is equal to another string. So for example, maybe I'm going to ask, instead of getting a number, I might ask, do you like chocolate? And say, if user guess equals yes, then I'd say me too. And in this case, I'm just going to get rid of the else because I just want to say me too if the user says yes. So when I run this, it asks me if I like chocolate. I type in yes, and it says me too. If I ran it again and I said no, it doesn't do anything because there's no else condition. Now also notice that in this comparison, if I type yes in capital letters, it's not the same thing as a lowercase yes. So you have to be careful when you're doing your comparisons to make sure that you're checking for every possibility. One good way to do that is to remember to use some of those string functions that we learned about earlier, and take the text that you want to compare and first convert it to lowercase or uppercase, and then check that value, that newly converted value where I turn their guess to lowercase, convert that now to a completely lowercase version of the answer you're looking for. So when I run this, if I type yes, it will take that yes, convert it to lowercase, and check if it's the same as a lowercase yes. And so now that works. It's also a good idea to give your user an idea of exactly what you're looking for in their input, because some people might type Y or N and it's not exactly what you're looking for. So it's a good idea to tell them exactly the text that you're going to be checking for.